And remember that this has many feedbacks in it. Money is something that is used to buy things. If we kill all the things that we would buy, if we destroy them all, then what's the point in having money? So there has to be a balance. And this is one thing that is in favour of gold and silver, that, gold and silver is produced if the value of money is high, if there's a shortage, because the cost of buying the capital equipment to mine the gold and silver will be low when the cost of money is high. Yeah? When gold is expensive, it means capital prices are low. Yeah? So the one is the corollary of the other. So shortage of money, gold expensive, prices low. Buy capital equipment, produce gold supply increases, prices decrease, capital equipment becomes expensive. Can't buy capital equipment to produce gold because there's not a profit in it. And so we have this kind of level, there's a natural balance.
And what he mentions here, again, beautiful point here, Shaykh Tarek. I mean, up until this point, I would say he's almost a Bitcoiner. And I think deep down, he really is. But like I said, I think he's of category 2. Those who don't really want to step on the toes of those who they feel are more senior to them and are just waiting for the scholars to issue a different verdict, rather than coming out and saying what they maybe even feel themselves. Or maybe not just confident in themselves, but rather be more confident if someone more senior to them accepts it. But anyway, he mentions the issue of supply and demand, basically. One of the features of gold is that we have two things. We have the cost of production and the value and the market value. If it costs £9 to produce gold and the value of that gold would be £10, then there was a £1 spread. As in, there's a £1 markup. I can make £1 in mining gold. But if for example the price of gold goes up to £20, but the cost of producing gold still remains at £9, then there's a massive spread. You're making £11 every time you mine gold. You're making £11 per ounce. That's a massive spread. And that massive spread, that huge markup, would cause more people to come into the market and mine gold, and that will bring more gold onto the market, more supply, and that increased supply onto the market will actually bring the price back down to cost price, or back down to the cost of production. So you have this equilibrium. If the price of gold goes up, the supply comes in, more people come in, and the price of gold comes down to equilibrium. And likewise, if the price of gold goes down, people start mining, less supply comes in the market, and then the price comes up to match it. So we have this equilibrium. And again, if Shaykh Tarek applies this principle fairly, you will see the same thing happens with Bitcoin. But the difference is that Bitcoin, we can't actually adjust the supply. The supply is fixed. There's nothing we can do to really increase the amount of Bitcoin onto the market. It will always be the same. And that's why the price dynamics of Bitcoin kind of match the issuance. So whenever we have the halving, when the amount of Bitcoin that's in the market goes by half, we find that the market tries to adjust, and that's where the price goes up until we reach equilibrium for a bit, and then the next halving comes and the price adjusts again. But that's not a discussion. It's just to make an allusion to the price volatility. But the point is, we have this equilibrium, and that's one of the reasons why gold achieved its feature, because the production was quite difficult to bring on the market, and we kind of have this slow moving market, as opposed to things that can be produced quickly, like tulips, and they tend to exit more bubbly, or can be very bubbly. Anyway, we'll see that more later on.
And we have to think about, these wider economic connotations, and not just look at the narrow legal position. But that narrow legal position is where I believe we start. So question, is it a receipt for ownership? Is it digital art, intellectual property of a kind? Is it a conceptual value that resides on a database and we use it because it's cheaper, more transparent, so forth, and we justify it on the objectives of the religion?
Yeah, so that whole introduction there was him laying down the groundwork and the foundation for the discussion with the ulama. And if you notice, he hasn't really passed an opinion himself. He's just laying down the groundwork as to what is the discussion. And let's see what Shaykh Saifuddin has to reply on that.
I would say it's not a receipt, because it is the good in itself. So a lot of people say, well, Bitcoin is backed by nothing. And the answer to that is Bitcoin is itself the backing of other things. You can have things backed by Bitcoin. In other words, gold is not backed by anything either. It itself has its value.
See, so like I said earlier on, people fail to understand the utility of Bitcoin, and that's why they fail to understand that its value is in itself. Yes, it's not physical, but we all understand now that things that don't have a physical being they can still have value. So Bitcoin doesn't need a backing, therefore it is not a receipt for something else. It in of itself is the value. Shaykh has got it right.
Now, yes, you can't hold it physically, but just because you can't hold it physically, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. I mean, and I think this shouldn't be something difficult for a Muslim scholar to understand.
So again, just being very simple, if we believe that Bitcoin has to have physical, or that money has to be physical, because physical is the only thing that has value, as the Shaykh rightly said, there are many things that have value that are not physical, and that's not outside the realms of debate.